said, you know what? Instead of asking for a mortgage, I'm going to offer a mortgage. Let me repeat that. Instead of asking to borrow money, I'm going to offer the opportunity for somebody to invest.
If you're a real estate investor and are wondering how to raise and leverage private money to make more profit on every deal, then you're in the right place. On Raising Private Money, we'll speak with new and seasoned investors to dissect their deals and extract the best tips and strategies to help you get the money, because the money comes first. Now here's your host, Jay Conner.
This conversation about building up your blueprint. It's time to take it, cause time is wasted. Go grind and chase it, don't lose it. This generation need integration with information to move with. An inclination that is abiding in entertaining improvement.
Hey, what's going on, Blueprint Nation? Welcome to another dope episode of the Respect My Blueprint podcast, where we bring awesome guests on the show that gives you the blueprint on how to do shit around here, okay? And today, all of my real estate investors or my viewers who are interested in real estate, I got a very, very special treat for you, because I know one of the biggest obstacles when it comes into real estate investing is trying to source capital for your deal, right? You know, getting money for a real estate deal is typically the biggest hurdle, the biggest thing that a lot of people are facing. But what if I told you, you can bypass the banks? You can go ahead and not experience the hardships or break down some of the myths and misconceptions you may have as far as getting into your first investment property. What if I even tell you there's strategies out there you can get into real estate investing for little to no money? All right. So I know you, for my real estate investors out there, you're going to be super excited about today's show, because we have an extraordinary and an expert in this field that's going to go ahead and share with us some of these gems. And he doesn't just beg big banks, okay? What he does, he bypasses them, like I said, all right? Known as the private money authority, my guest today has turned rejection into millions, raising $2 million in 90 days without any bank, credit, or hard money lender, believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen. So if you're tired of if you're tired of watching deals slip away in your fingertips because of dealing with cash, well, guess what? This is your wake-up call today, as this is the episode we're going to go ahead and break down some of these myths and barriers. My guest today is here to drop the real blueprint to funding freedom in your next real estate deal. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and welcome my guest today, Jay O'Connor. How you doing today, Jay?
Wesley, I'm doing fantastic, and thank you so much for inviting me to come along, talk about my favorite topic that I'm so passionate about, and that's private money for real estate funding. And the reason I'm so excited about it is because private money's had more of an impact on my real estate investing business than any other strategy I've employed. When I first started raising private money all the way back in February of 2009, my real estate investing business tripled in the midst of all those foreclosures, tripled in the midst of banks not loaning money, hard money lenders not loaning money. But because of private money, my business tripled. And you know what, Wesley? Jay Conner has never missed out on a deal since that time for not having the money.
Man, hey, listen, Jay, you have definitely grabbed the attention of the audience, even myself, right? Because we all know what happened back in 2008, 7, and 9 with the financial crisis and everything. That was a bad time right there. So we're going to talk about that. But first things first, before we get into it, you've given them a little elevator pitch about yourself, but I was hoping if you could go ahead and share a little bit more about who is Jay Conner, what's his background a little bit, and how did he even get into real estate investing?
Yeah. So my wife, Carol Joy, and I, we live here in eastern North Carolina in a real small, teeny tiny town called Morehead City, North Carolina. Population only 8,000 people in Morehead City. Our total target market that we invest in is only 40,000 people, but I've rehabbed and flipped over 500 houses now since being in real estate. We actually started way back in 2003. And our average profits right now are $86,000 per deal, profit per deal. And I don't share that to brag at all, Wesley. I share that to make a point. And that is, there's an argument to be made to be a big fish in a small pond. So this is a small market, but we dominate the market. We dominate the market with our marketing, finding motivated sellers of off-market houses that are not in the multiple listing service. I haven't bought a house out of the multiple listing service since before COVID.
Okay. So you don't mess with the MLS at all, right?
Well, there's nothing in there. There's no deals in there, and there's no inventory, and there's a whole lot more demand than there is supply. So all the houses that we buy are directly from for sale by owners, off-market houses. So yeah, we started all the way back in 2003. Before 2003, for decades, I was in the mobile home industry, manufactured housing. My dad, Wallace Connor, he's almost 92 years old right now, and he's still a developer and building 350 houses right now at 91 and a half years old. But yeah, I was in the mobile home business. I grew up in that industry of helping families be able to purchase affordable housing. And so that industry fell out of favor with Wall Street in the early 2000s, and the financing for the consumer went away. So I knew if I ever got out of mobile homes, I wanted to get into single family houses and flip houses. This was before HGTV even existed back then. And so, yeah, we've been buying and selling. We've been buying and selling houses since 2003. We've done hundreds and hundreds of deals. I got 47 private lenders right now, individuals that are funding our deals. And when I started out, of course, I just started out with one, right? And it grew from there. My first private lender, I got $500,000 from that private lender. But I tell you what makes this world so different for me and the way I go about raising private money. You know what's interesting, Wesley? I've never asked anybody for money. Ever since I started attracting money, funding back in 2009, I've yet to ask anybody for money, and I've never pitched a deal. Hey, look, Wesley, I'm going to take a little risk right now, and I'm going to ask you a question. I think I know the answer to it, but I'm going to ask you anyway. Have you ever heard the guru stand up on stage instructing real estate investors, and he or she said something to this effect? Well, just get the deal under contract. The money will show up. I want to throw up. That's the stupidest thing I ever heard in my life. I mean, you get a deal under contract, is a box of money just going to fall out of the sky and land on your front door? The money's going to show up? Or has money got legs? Is it like go chase you around and say, oh, you got a deal, let me give you some money? That's stupid. And so it only makes sense to me. The money comes first. Get the money lined up. There's always deals. There's always going to be deals. And once you got the money lined up, and Wesley, I'll share with you and your audience how I never ask for money, how I never pitch a deal. And I got a big problem. I got more money, private money available than I can use. And I'll share how that works. But just think about how many more offers a real estate investor is going to make when they got money, hundreds of thousands of dollars, burning a hole in your pocket, ready to make offers.
Now you're talking our love language here, right? Okay, yeah, absolutely. Now, well, for first of all, because you're right, I've seen, and you know who is very, very famous for that phrase that you mentioned there is wholesalers, right? Wholesalers will teach you that just get it under contract. Don't worry about that. You could sell the contract and whatnot. But
you know what, Wesley? For a wholesaler to be successful, if they're smart, they do get the money lined up first by having a list of all cash buyers. Well, for a wholesaler, that's where the money is, an all cash buyer. And a wholesaler that's been trained correctly or taught, the first thing you do is build your buyer's list. Yeah. Build your all cash buyer's list. So then when you got a deal under contract, you got somewhere to assign that to. But this world of private money, speaking of wholesalers, Wesley, this world of private money gives the wholesaler the option to stay in a deal if they want to, right? They can assign whatever contracts out they want to. But, if you're listening to Wesley's show here and you're a wholesaler, and if you've done any deals, assign contracts, I can almost guarantee you've done some deals that you thought to yourself, boy, I know this deal's going to profit $60,000, $70,000, $80,000. And if I had the money to stay in this deal, I'd stay in the deal. Well, guess what? With private money, it gives you the option to do whatever you want to do.
Now we all have experienced the 2008, 2007 crisis, right? Where, foreclosures was going rampant through the subprime lending and everything. Banks, they've tightened their belts. They wasn't loaning out. Lehman Brothers collapsed and everything. So obviously that was the moment that forced you to pivot into private money.
Oh,
right?
Yes. I remember the conversation like yesterday when my banker cut me off over the phone. I remember exactly that conversation. I remember what he said. I remember what I said. But yes, I remember when it happened, what happened, the conversation, and then how that led me to private money. Yes.
So first of all, how difficult is it to obtain private money? Because this is an obscure world for a lot of individuals. So if you could sort of break that down a little bit, because I want to, and by the end of this episode, to educate the audience that attracting or sourcing private money is really not that difficult from what I'm understanding, right?
It's super easy, super simple. However, it's very difficult, and the real estate investor will never attract private money until they own the real estate between their ears first. So what am I talking about? Talking about mindset. Talking about mindset, right? I mean, in this world of real estate investing, it's 95% mindset anyway. I mean, yes, you got to have the knowledge, you got to have the tools, you got to have the know-how, but there's a bridge between knowledge and implementation. And that bridge is called the right mindset. So let me first break that down, what I mean by that. When I first was getting ready to attract private money, I made a decision right up front. I'm not chasing, I'm not begging, I'm not selling, I'm not persuading anybody. I'm not going to try to talk anybody into anything as far as loaning me money. And I also decided I'm not going to pitch any deals. I want the money chasing me. So how in the world could I go about doing that? So here's the first thing I did. The first thing I did is I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put on my teacher hat.
Good money teacher. I like that.
I'm going to put on my teacher hat and be a private money teacher. And I'm simply going to go about, first of all, first category of private lenders, I'm going to first go about teaching, leading with a servant's heart, and exposing the opportunity of being a private lender to, first of all, people in my own network, people that I go to church with, where, there's a 5-letter word in this world of private money that begins with a T, and that word is trust. So the trust factor, we call this relationship money. So the trust factor is huge. Who's going to loan you money unless they trust you? The only reason somebody don't loan you money on a deal is they don't think you're going to pay them, right? Or they think there's a high risk that you're not going to pay them. So trust is very, very important. So I decided, you know what? I'm going to share this opportunity with, first of all, people in my own network. And, the traditional way to borrow money for real estate or to borrow money for anything is traditional mindset is whoever's got the money to loan makes the rules. Is the right? Puts the terms together. 99.9999% of people walking around think, and I call it stinking thinking, right? But they think that whoever's going to loan the money makes the rules, is the underwriter, sets the interest rate, the terms. So I turned that whole mentality upside down, and I said, you know what? Instead of asking for a mortgage, I'm going to offer a mortgage. Let me repeat that. Instead of asking to borrow money, I'm going to offer the opportunity for somebody to invest. So in order for that to happen, I had to first decide, well, what in the world am I going to teach? What am I going to teach? What am I going to offer? Now, a very, very important part of this is separating conversations. Don't miss this if you're watching or listening to this show. Okay. Separate the conversation with a potential private lender that's never done this before. I mean, I got 47 private lenders and not one of them ever heard of or knew about private money or how they could use retirement funds and move it over to a self-directed IRA company and then loan that money out as a private lender. None of them ever heard of that. None of them ever heard of that. Well, an important point to understand is separate the conversation between teaching and talking about the opportunity and how private lending works, and then having a deal for them to fund. Here's a writer downer. Desperation has a smell to it. Ooh. Desperation has a smell to it. Yes. And if you're talking with a potential private lender and you're talking about a deal in the initial conversation, you already sound desperate by even bringing that deal up, right? So you see, when you're teaching, you're not chasing or begging. You're teaching and you're offering an opportunity as to what private lending is and how they can become a private lender. And it's if it doesn't make sense to them, that's fine, because you're not talking about deals. And look, some people say that are new to capital raising, they'll say, well, that fear of rejection, I just can't handle a no. Guess what? There is no rejection. There is zero rejection in this world, because let me ask you a question. How can you be rejected if you're not asking anybody for anything?
Oh, yeah. 100% failure rate if you're not asking, of course.
Yeah. So I'm teaching. So I had to first decide, what am I going to teach and how am I going to go about this? So after getting my mindset right, I'm not chasing and begging. I'm going to be educating people on this opportunity. So I had to decide, well, what am I going to teach? Well, I had to put my program together. I had to put my opportunity together as to what I was going to share with people. So I had to decide, okay, well, what interest rate am I going to pay people? Well, I decided 8%. I've been paying them 8% since February 2009 through all the volatility, interest rates up and down. People say to me, they say, Jay, how in the world you been paying your private lenders the same interest rate all this time with the market going up and down? It's real simple. 8% ever since 2009 is a whole lot more money than they can get in a local bank, in a savings account, or even a 7-month or 12-month CD. And since I started doing it, it's gone from below 3% all the way down to below 1%, all the way up to 5% a year and a half ago. Now it's down below 3% again. Well, 8% is higher than all that. And secondly, I'm paying them the same thing since 2009 because I make the rules, not them. I make the rules. You make the rules. So I decided I was going to pay them 8%. I had to decide, well, how am I going to protect them, right? How are we going to mitigate the risk? Well, I decided I'm not going to borrow more than 75% of the after repaired value. I didn't say 75% of purchase price, 75% of after repaired value. That's why I always bring home a big check when I buy a property. Who wants to get paid to buy properties and take none of your own money to the closing table, right? So conservative loan to value based off of the after repaired value. How else am I going to protect them? Well, I decided that I'm not going to borrow any unsecured money. They're going to get a promissory note, and I'm going to collateralize that note with, here in North Carolina, a deed of trust. Most people call it a mortgage. So I'm not going to borrow unsecured money. I also decided I'm going to protect them by naming them as the mortgagee on the insurance policy. That gives them another layer of protection. So I want to give them all the same protection that a bank would get. So that's what I did. I put my program together, my opportunity together. And let me tell you and share, Wesley, how I got my first $500,000 as an example without asking for money. So here we go.
Let's do it.
Carol Joy and I, we've been going for years to church, to the Morehead City Church of Christ on Barber Road here in Morehead City. And a gentleman by the name of Wayne and I had known each other for quite a while. And so we were going to Bible study on Wednesday night at 7:30. And I walked in the foyer. I'm looking for Wayne, and there he was. So I walked up to Wayne, and I said to Wayne, Wayne, I got something I want to talk with you about confidentially after Bible study. Have you got a few minutes? He said, sure. So Bible study's over. We walk down to the nursery. We walk in the nursery and shut the door. Here's exactly what I said to Wayne. This is exactly what I said to Wayne. I said, Wayne, you know everybody in this town. And he did. He was the original Zenith television dealer in Morehead City, North Carolina. Now, if you don't know who the Zenith television dealer was in your town, that's because you're too young to remember life before Walmart came to town.
Right.
What did you do back then? You went to the Zenith television dealer and he sold it to you. He financed it. He actually would come to your house and repair your TV instead of you throwing it in the trash and going back to Walmart and getting your next 64-inch screen for $299. So anyway, Wayne knew everybody. He was well involved in the Rotary Club. So back to what I said to Wayne. I said, Wayne, you know everybody in this town. And then I said something right after that is a very magical phrase. And then that's when I said, Wayne, I need your help. There's a writer downer. I mean, God created us to help people. Most people want to help other people. I said, Wayne, I need your help. I said, I've now opened up my real estate investing business by referral only to people that I know and trust. And here's what I need your help with. When you run across somebody that is complaining about the low interest rates in the local bank and losing money in the stock market, would you refer them to me and I'll let them know how it is that they can earn insane high rates of return, because that's what I'm now paying. Well, what do you think Wayne said? Wayne looked at me and he says, well, now, Brother Jay, what you got going on there? And I said, well, are you saying that you and your wife might be interested in participating? He said, well, I might. I said, well, why is that? He said, because I'm losing money in the stock market and I'm not making much money at the local bank. He said, well, Wayne says, well, what kind of interest rate are you paying? And I said, well, Wayne, that sort of depends on the deal. I said, what sounds high to you? He said, well, I'm making less than 3% in the local bank and I'm losing money in the stock market. He says, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6%. I said, Wayne, I can't pay you 5 or 6%, but I can pay you 8%. He said, put me down for $250,000. And so the next day I went to him and his wife's home. And I came figuratively with my teacher hat on, my whole mindset. And I came there not to ask them for money. I came there to teach them what private money, private lending is, and the opportunity I have. And so they first of all understood when I told them, I said, a private lender like yourself is simply an individual that loans money from either your investment capital and or your retirement funds. And I pay high rates of return safely and securely to my private lenders. So I taught them, I said, here's the interest rate I pay. Here's how you can get your money back in case of an emergency. Here's how you're protected as a lender, etc. And so, and I'm not bringing up any deals. I'm not talking any deals.
You never brought any deals up. You just
no deals.
Opportunity, right?
No deals. And so by the end of that conversation and 2 cups of coffee, that too came $500,000.
Double.
That they wanted to invest. And so here's what I told them. I said, y'all, I'm going to put your money to work for you just as soon as possible. I'll call you up when I got a deal for you. And they said, okay. So about a week went by, and Wesley, you know what I did? I called them up with what I call the good news phone call. The good news phone call. Everybody likes good news, and like you say, they like love language, right? So I'm going to share with you, Wesley, you and your audience right now, the exact script as to what I say in the good news phone call that gets all my deals funded 100% of the time. So let's do a little setup here. The best way I can illustrate this is, Wesley, for you and me to do a little role play here. And so let me do the setup. Let's say hypothetically that you and I go to church together. And let's say hypothetically we've known each other for some time and we've hung out together and, you know, we have a relationship and we like each other. Let's also hypothetically assume that you worked for an employer that you no longer work for. And let's say you still got a 401k with the plan administrator at that previous employer and you're not happy with the volatility. I mean, that 401k is in the stock market and you're not happy with it. And let's also,
I want something a little more stable.
You want something stable, you want a reliable rate of return instead of the volatility. And let's also hypothetically assume I've taught you about my opportunity, and you like it. You like the 8%. You like how you're protected. And let's also assume I have already introduced you to the self-directed IRA company I recommend. And let's assume you've moved that $150,000 that you had in that 401k over to the self-directed IRA company, and you're waiting for the good news phone call. Because I told you I'd call you up when I got a deal for you to fund. So I call you. So that's the setup. So I call you up, you answer the phone, we have a little chit chat. And then here's exactly what I say in the good news phone call. I say, Wesley, I got great news for you. I can now put your money to work. I've got a house in Newport, North Carolina with an under contract to purchase with an after repaired value of $200,000. Now, the funding required for the deal matches up to what you have to invest. The funding requires $150,000. Now, closing is going to be next Thursday. I'll need for you to have your funds wired to my real estate attorney's trust account by next Wednesday. I'm going to have my attorney email you the wiring instructions to their trust account. That's the end of the conversation. The most stupid thing I could do is ask you, do you want to fund the deal? Of course you want to fund the deal. And here's 3 big reasons why Wesley wants to fund my deal. Number 1 reason Wesley wants to fund my deal in this example is because, for goodness sakes, he trusted me to move his $150,000 over to the self-directed IRA company. He wouldn't have done that, unless he trusted me and he liked my recommendation, right? So you see, in that initial conversation with Wesley, I become his trusted advisor as to how to get high rates of return safely and securely. So that's number 1 reason he trusted me. He moved the money over to the self-directed IRA company with no deal attached to it yet. The second reason Wesley wants to fund my deal is he knows I'm not going to bring a deal for him to fund unless it matches the criteria of the opportunity that I already taught him. Did you hear the numbers that I said in the script? I told Wesley I've got a house under contract with an after repaired value of $200,000. I told him the funding required for the deal is $150,000. That's 75% of the after repaired value. And the third reason Wesley is dying on the vine to fund my deal is because he's not making any money until I put his money to work. I'm not paying him any interest until he is funding a deal with his retirement funds. Those are the 3 big reasons why Wesley cannot wait to wire those funds to my real estate attorney's trust account.
Makes sense. And that's and it makes sense. I love how you just simplify it. It's not overcomplicated. You're not saying, well, we need to go ahead and speak with the escrow, title, and XYZ, go send this documentation. It's literally the trust is, well, first, like you said, the mindset, right? You educate, you inform, then you are able to go ahead and say, hey, listen, all right, when I find a deal, then I'm going to bring it to your attention. And then you find something that fits in the parameters. It's really a 1, 2, 3 step blueprint. And I love that about that approach there, right? So my next question is, wow, so and can anybody be a private money lender? Is this somebody that, like you said, Wayne from your church? Can it be Carol from your coworker? Can it be, your colleague that you went to school with? Can it be typically anybody that could be a private money investor?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question, and here's why. At my live events, at my private money conferences, live events, one of the sessions that I always do is I bring a dozen or so private lenders of mine and Carol Joy's to the event, and I interview them in front of the audience. And the biggest takeaway that the audience gets at my private money live events is that these are ordinary people.
Wow.
I mean, of the 47 private lenders I've got retired school teachers. I've got law enforcement officers. I've got military people. I've got civil service workers. I've got an engineer. These are just ordinary ordinary people that never heard of this opportunity until we exposed them to the opportunity by teaching it. And they were all looking for a higher rate of return that was safe and secure. So in answer to your question, can anybody be a private lender? Well, guess what? I've even had 2 minor children be private lenders because they inherited money from their grandparents after their grandparents passed away. And the parents didn't know what to do with that inheritance money and didn't want to get just a little bit of money in the local bank. And so their parents knew that I had this private lending opportunity. So the minor children became private lenders. So yes, anybody that can fog a mirror that's got either, liquid assets or retirement funds that they're not happy with can be a private lender.
Wow, that's fun. Okay. So this is great because this now lets the audience know, hey, if I want to become a private money lender, there's really no type of special education or formal training that needs to go. They would need to undertake in order to do this, right? Okay. So now let's go to the consumer side, right? I'm somebody, and first of all, the private money, does this typically work for investment properties or more for properties that you're looking to occupy as to live in? What's the better fit there?
Yeah, typically you can, but typically you're not going to be using private money for your primary residence because the length of the note with a private lender is typically going to be in that 2-year time frame.
Got it.
And most of the time, I'm not going to even use the money for that length of time. Now, you could use it for your primary residence, but within time, you would probably want to refinance that, pay off your private lender, because I'm paying my private lenders 8%. I don't want to pay 8% on my primary residence when even in today's market, I could get a mortgage in the high 6s or right around 7. And of course, 3 years ago, with all the refinancing, you could get a mortgage for less than 3%.
3%.
Right? So I wouldn't want to pay 8% for a very, very long period of time, to the private lender on my primary residence.
Right. Okay. So this is typically for an investment.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm looking.
Oh, and by the way, Wesley, since you brought that up, private money is not just for single family houses. It's for any kind of real estate. It's for commercial, multifamily, self-storage, land. But the difference is how you structure the deal. Now, with single family houses, the SEC's got nothing to do with what we do on raising money for single family houses.
Okay.
And here's why. Because everything that we borrow is asset-backed debt, which means I'm borrowing money on this single family house. The lender's not only getting a promissory note, we're not borrowing unsecured money. The private lender is getting a mortgage or a deed of trust. Well, in contrast to that, if you're raising money for commercial property or apartments or et cetera, then that's called syndication. That's where you're going to get that's where you're pulling money together and you're going to have a fund, right? You'll have a fund for your private money investors. They're investors at that point. They're really not lenders. They're investors. So they're investing in that fund. So you're going to have a SEC attorney draw up a private placement memorandum for those types of funds. But you know what? It's all the same money. It's all the same, type of individuals that are investing. It just comes down to how you structure the deal.
Makes sense. Okay. So say I'm somebody that hypothetically I want to go ahead. I see a triplex or a duplex or a fourplex, right? That I want to invest in. Okay. Now, unfortunately, I'm somebody that's tight on funds, but I have a golden opportunity, right? This is a needle in the haystack opportunity that I've come across, right? Perfect terms. The seller wants to get from under this property for personal reasons. I need a private money lender, right? So I reach out to you, Jay. Jay, man, I need your help, brother. I need you to go ahead and make this thing happen for me. what's the qualifications is needed in my part in order to be able to qualify for your private money program, despite me being limited in funds and everything like that?
So I'm a little confused. So ask me that a different way,
So in a
or
better way,
explain that.
so I want to invest
So
in
you're a real estate investor, right?
Right.
In this scenario,
Right.
and you found a deal,
right.
right? And you need funding for your
I
deal,
need funding for my deal. Yes.
right? Well, there's a problem.
Okay.
The deal came first in your scenario and not the money. The worst time in the world to be raising money is when you need it for a deal. So don't go get the deal under contract first. Get the money lined up. Get the money first, right? So you've already got a verbal pledge, a verbal commitment from your private money lender or private money lenders. Then you call them up with the good news phone call with that deal you've got under contract, right? So that's a perfect example or question as to why you don't want to be having a deal under contract and now you're looking for money.
I get it.
Because if you've got a deal under contract and you're looking for money, now you're pitching the deal, right?
Right. That's when the desperation.
That's when the desperation sets in,
You
right?
mentioned that earlier.
Yeah, so
Wow.
that's why we want to have the money verbally pledged, waiting for the good news phone call when you get that fourplex under contract.
Because, like you said, the deals are always in abundance. You
Always deals. Get the money lined up first.
I see what you're saying. Okay. All right. So that is the initial first step, getting the money lined up. And now let me ask you a question. So if I'm looking to get the money first, what's the best strategy to do so? Would I just come to Jay and his program, Unrolled in Your Mentorship, and say, hey, Jay, you're the one with experience on this. Can you help me be able to go ahead and source private money?
Yeah, a great way to learn how to raise private money very, very quickly, the way I do it, is if you're listening to this show and you want to start raising private money, what's the first thing you should do? The first thing you should do is let me give you a gift. And what in the world is that gift? And the gift is I'd love to give you my bestseller, my best-selling book, which is called Where to Get the Money Now. This is not an ebook downloadable. Yes, the post office is still in business. I'll express mail this book to you. It's called Where to Get the Money Now. Subtitle, How and Where to Get Money for Your Real Estate Deals Without Relying on Traditional Lenders or Hard Money Lenders. I'm even going to include 2 tickets valued at $3,000 to my private money conference live event. I'll include those 2 tickets. And the book is $20 on Amazon, but don't spend $20 on Amazon. Let me just give you the book. You just cover shipping. And I'll autograph the book. You can pick up my book at www.jayconner, and I'm an ER, not an OR. So www.jayconner.com/book. Again, that's jayconner, jayconner.com/book. And of course, Wesley, I have that in the show notes as well.
Of course. So, and of course, ladies and gentlemen, I highly encourage you to pick up the book because as you can see so far, Jay has dropped tremendous gems as far as being able to source private money. As you can see, he's the guru when it comes to seeking private money. But I'll have a couple questions before we wrap up, Jay. So typically, how long does it take to line up private money for a deal? Because is it typically 30 days, 60 days, 90 days? What's the strategy on the timeline?
Yeah. So the first thing to do is, and by the way, in my book, I lay out exactly what my program is, my opportunity is that I offer new private lenders. So all that is in the book. So the first thing you got to do is learn what it is that you're going to teach, right? That you're going to offer, right? People the opportunity. And I have many, many members in my private money community, my students that raise hundreds of thousands of dollars in less than 30 days. As I shared my story with Wayne, I got $500,000 committed in less than 24 hours of even mentioning what this, opportunity is. But you got to know what it is that you're going to, what is it you're going to teach. So realistically, 30 days ish.
30 days ish. Okay. And typically the investment timeline for the lender, you says 2 years. This is not a long term or not a 10, 15-year conventional mortgage or anything. 2 years. And after that, the investor, they're going to refinance out of the deal to something more conventional. Right?
Well, typically, I don't even use the money for 2 years. Now, by the way, you can do it for more than 2 years. I mean, whenever I have a private lender loaning me money on a deal and they're using their retirement funds, I'll just go ahead and set the term for 5 years on that, because a lot of times I'll sell houses on lease purchase or rent to own, and I'll help people and families get ready for a mortgage so they can cash me out. But if I'm doing a flip, typically I'm in and out of that, within 9 months or whatever. So I'll pay the private lender off when I cash out of the deal, and then I'll reinvest their private money on the next deal. Mm-hmm. So that's one thing about it. Once you have a private lender, you get to use that money over and over and over and over again on deal after deal after deal.
Wow. So that 8% begins to compound. So that 8 turns into 16 and so on and so forth. Am I right?
No, it's an APR. It's an APR. So it's an annual percentage rate. However, you're right, Wesley. They take that money, the interest they've earned a lot. Now, I've got some private lenders that are living off of that interest income. It supplements their income. Right. But other private lenders that are using their retirement funds, all that interest they earn goes back into their retirement account. Now they reinvest the principal amount plus the interest they've earned. So yes, in that case, it is compounding for them.
So here's another question. Now, you mentioned that's a strategy that has become very popular with a lot of real estate investors like Grant Cardone, which this became very popular under the Jobs Act under Obama, where he allowed for syndication, right? So, and you mentioned when it comes to syndication, you are transitioning instead of a private money lender to your investors. You have a pool of investors. Which strategy is more beneficial or advantageous? Is it being a private money lender or an investor part of a syndication deal?
Well, as a private lender with single family houses, the private lender has more protection than an investor in a fund. Because if a private lender, or when a private lender is loaning money on a house, if they don't get the return, if the borrower, the real estate investor, doesn't pay them, the house does. That's their legal recourse.
The house is the collateral, right?
Yeah, the house is the collateral, right? So if they don't get their money, then their legal recourse is they can foreclose just like a bank. That's why we give them a deed of trust or mortgage. So they get the property. In contrast to that, an investor that's investing in a fund, all you got is a piece of paper with no guarantees.
Ooh, I see what you're saying there. Okay. But so you would direct the average person, like we talked about Wayne from the church or Alice from the coworker, and the best bet to start off with is becoming a private money lender with a single family home, as that gives you the ultimate protection.
Yes. Particularly when you're protecting your private lenders the way that I am. And all that's in the book. All the protection that you give your private lenders, all that is laid out in the book. And of course, your real estate attorney draws up all the documents.
And now here's a final question. Do you deal with strictly private? Do you deal with properties and strategies in your area in North Carolina, or you're nationwide with it?
Yeah. The properties that I actually invest in are all right around here in our area.
Awesome. But this is a strategy that is universal. That doesn't matter if you're in California or in Florida, East Coast or West Coast. This is applicable anywhere in any market, correct?
Absolutely. It works wherever there are houses.
Okay. Awesome. Well, listen, Jay, you have been absolutely phenomenal in educating the audience and everything like that. So before we wrap up, I want to ask you one last question before we go ahead and get into the final segment of the episode. If there's one bit of advice, what is the one piece of advice you would share with them?
And that would be for a real estate investor that's wanting to raise private money?
Exactly, yes.
Yes. Order my book and get educated.
That's what I would say. Get educated, get the mindset. And that's all what it takes, because obviously when you're educated, when you have the mindset, that puts you in a position to be able to educate others and to be able to start sourcing capital. And of course, like you said, get the money first before you start searching for the deal. Which
Yes.
That's the biggest takeaway right there I've taken away from today's episode. So, Jay, listen, first of all, before we wrap up, I know you have a YouTube channel. You're on LinkedIn as well, too. So if you could share with the audience how they can find you, which I wasn't even aware. You got a conference coming up. So tell the audience how they can connect with you. I'm pretty sure they have a lot of questions. There's a lot of interest right now from everybody that's watching this episode. And I also, one final time, give them instructions on how they can get that signed autographed copy of the book with the 2 tickets in it. Share it with the audience so they can go ahead and hear one more time from you.
Sure, absolutely. So go to www.jayconner.com/book. And right there on that page, you'll have my contact information as well. It'll be right there in the envelope with the book.
Woo, man. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to grab me a copy. Make sure you grab a copy. Let's show Jay all of the support, all of the love that he deserves. You know, thanks for having him being on today's show to educate us, because, again, I know a lot of individuals out there that's wanting to get into real estate investing probably was thinking, man, I'm having a tough time getting funding from banks. My credit is not too good. You know, I don't have the financials or anything like that. But guess what? There's ordinary folks out there that can be able to help you fund your next deal. So it's definitely good to know that there's options out there, and Jay has definitely provided a gem with that. But listen, if you want to be able, and of course, all of the book directions to be able to get Jay's book will be in the show notes, as well as to be able to go ahead and connect with Jay. Check out his YouTube, give him a follow on LinkedIn as well too. Let's go ahead and give him all of the love and support that he deserves. Jay, thanks for coming on today. You've been absolutely phenomenal. I appreciate you, and always keep doing the right thing out there. As you know, what you're doing the Lord's work by being able to go ahead and help people earn a high return on their money, as well as providing housing for individuals out there. So keep doing the good work out there, my friend.
Thank you, Wesley. And by the way, I didn't mention my podcast. If you've enjoyed this show, come over and check out my show. It's on all the podcast platforms. Just search for Raising Private Money. In my 8th year now, over 800 episodes. And twice a week, I interview real estate investors that have raised private money and how they've gone about raising private money as well. So come join me at that party. Just search for Raising Private Money with Jay Conner. Wesley, God bless you. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome, man. Jay, thank you so much. As well as, ladies and gentlemen, check out the Respect My Blueprint podcast every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 8 p.m. And always, always, always be safe out there, ladies and gentlemen. Catch you on the flip side. Take care. Bye-bye.
This conversation about building up your blueprint. It's time to take it, cause time is wasted. Go grind and chase it, don't lose it. This generation need integration with information to move with. An inclination that is abiding in entertaining improvement. Yep, Wesley Paul with Blueprint. This guests are exclusive. Get on and tune in and then learn some new tips about credit, finance, investment. A nice chance to get rich and buy land. Flip it, quick 9 bands. Learn all the skills from Wesley did it. Learn how to build successful business. Run up a mill and get the digits. Run up a mill. Look, safe place where guests are speaking. Based off financial freedom. All facts, no cap, believe it. Podcast, you have to see it.
Are you feeling inspired by the knowledge you gained in this episode? Then head over to jayconner.com/moneyguide. That's JCONNER.com/moneyguide and download your free guide that shares 7 reasons why private money will skyrocket your real estate investing business right now. Again, that's jayconner.com/moneyguide to get your free guide. We'll see you next time on Raising Private Money with Jay Conner.